Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the color green in its different variations of tints and shades to create a bush. And so before we get started, you want to make sure that you have all of your materials, so water, paper, your brush. We're going to go ahead and just double check that the brush is in fact clean. It is great. For your palette, you're going to want to add clean green, so this is just a regular green. This is a regular black, just in case we need an extra bit of it. I'm not sure if we will, just in case. We have two shades of green, so this one is actually a lot darker than this one, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys. And so that's what the first one is kind of swatching like. It looks almost like a black color, and then over here, that one we have a little more green in it. Then we want to go ahead and have three different types of tints. So this is our lightest, this is our second lightest, and then this is our third. Now if the third lightest to you looks relatively close to the second lightest, so if these look the same, we can always grab some of the clean green and add it over here just to make it slightly darker. Now to create this bush, we are going to be adding a bit of paint to the paper, and so we're going to be layering a lot. So please make sure that you have your sheet taped up. Okay, first thing we're going to do, especially for those of us who are a little nervous to get started right away, we're going to go ahead and grab a pencil, and the bush is just going to be look something like this. Now it doesn't have to look exactly or perfect, because again, bushes, like all things in nature, they're irregular, they don't have one single form, and so it's okay to have it like this. And in fact, once we start painting, if it changes its form, that's totally fine too. Usually I like to also place one color in the background, but since the background would be a sky, I don't want it to intervene with the green, so we're just going to tackle the bush for now. Okay. And so we're going to go ahead, and we're actually going to start with not the darkest, but the second darkest, okay? And similar to the clouds, we're just going to go ahead and pat it in. Right, this is going to give the illusion of the different types of like textures that we would see in a bush in real life, right? They're covered with so many leaves. Okay, we want to make sure that the bottom portion here, this is really dark. The edge as well. As we bring it to the center, it's okay if it lightens just a little bit, but we will add some areas where it's slightly darker than others. That way we can create the illusion of shadows, right, in the bush. And so we're going to go like that. Make sure that the top portion is not as dark. So up here we want to make sure that it's not as dark. Okay. And we just do the same thing all around. And again, this bottom portion, we want this to be darkest. That's kind of like our core shadow almost. Okay, so it's looking something like this. I have a little bit more of the shadow going on over here. I'm going to add some more darker shadows over here. And then because we've layered so much paint, we are going to have to wait for this to dry. So if you want to come back and tackle a different drawing while this, or a different painting while this dries, that's totally fine to do. But I'm going to pause the video here to wait for this to dry a little bit before adding our next layer. Okay, so the first layer has dried, and once it dries, typically you get to see how dark or how light the color ended up looking. And so right now it looks like the darkest areas didn't actually become the darkest areas. So we're gonna go in and we're going to use the darker of the two values, of the two shaded values, and we're just gonna go ahead, and we're going to add them in those specific areas where it should be slightly darker. And so one of those areas is towards the bottom of the bush, and then towards some of the edges of the bush as well. So right here, this is what's going to give it kind of a that realistic look. It's going to make it look like the shadows or the light is seeping through the bush in different ways, which is accurate, it's representational, that's how we see it in the real life. So just like that. Okay, and so now we have the build, and now we have the darkest areas. We have right here too, and maybe even right here on the edge. And if you get a little bit of paint on the edges like that, that's totally fine. I actually think it makes it look more natural. And so now that we have the darkest areas kind of settled, now we're going to wait for this layer to dry as well. Okay, now that that first layer has dried, we're gonna go in, and this time just with the regular green, we're gonna go ahead, we're going to grab this, and in the lighter sections, we're just going to add some of that pop of green. Okay, so I'm adding it right in here, also here. I do layer it sometimes on top of some of like the darker areas, just because, you know, I think it layers it and makes it look more realistic. So something like that to make it look a little bit more. And then with whatever residue I had, that's where I tackled the middle portions. Okay. And so right now, I know it's a little difficult to see, so I'm going to get a little bit closer. I'm going to turn on this. We're going to do that, and then I'm going to slightly block off some of the light, and I might actually turn this one all the way off. That way, this is what we're kind of looking at. It is going to be slightly darker. That way, from further away, it looks more realistic. Okay, so the lighting, right, we have a lot of the light hitting this, so we can't really see it 100%, but don't worry, trust the process. Okay, so we added the green right here, so this green was added right here, kind of like the letter G or the number 6, kind of like that. Okay, we're gonna go in, and now we're going to use the darkest of all the tints, and we're going to grab that, and then we're gonna go in and we're going to just start adding a few of these lighter tints in there. Okay, something like this. And it's very random, and again, I'm just pushing my brush in. So just like that. So now we have this going. This is the first layer. Lovely. I'm gonna wait for it to dry a little bit to see if it's actually that bright or if it's going to darken. Okay, mine is starting to dry a little bit, and as I'm looking at it, it looks like it's starting to darken. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add some more. Again, of this one. And then I'm just buffing out the edges over here. And I'm not bringing it all the way down to the bottom just yet. And this one over here. And then buff that out a little bit. And so, although I'm not bringing it all the way to the end, I am going to bring just a little bit to the edge, just to make it look a little bit more believable. Okay, and again, I'm going to wait for it to dry just a little bit. Okay, I went ahead and I turned off a few of the lights in the room just so that we can see this more accurately. And so now we can start to kind of see how the different grains are layering up. Now we're gonna go in and we're going to jump to this next one. And I'm going to wipe it so that it's not as globbed onto the paintbrush. And this time I'm going to just place it in the areas where I'm imagining the highlights are going to be, or like the lighter values would be sitting. So if the sun is up at the top, then right here at the top. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do something like that. I am going to water my brush just because I don't like when it separates all that much. Okay, then right here, we're going to do one here. I'm kind of following the index right here so you can see that it's kind of going in. So because there's that little like indent, that's why I'm adding that color there. And then over here, there's one. That looks like it's too much paint, so I'm going to pick some up. I'm going to grab it, place some over here, and then I'm pushing it downward. And then I'm going to grab some more from up here, and I'm going to buff that out. And then right here, again, because this is curved, so it's something like that. This is actually not a bad start. Okay. And then I'm just sprinkling in a few on the edges as well. So something like that. Something like that. Right. And so now this is what it's looking like now that it's nice and dry. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm also going to kind of show it from a distance. And I'm going to turn off this light. Okay, so now we're starting to kind of see those areas and how it's supposed to be slightly darker. Now, if you cover too much of your darker like shadows, you can always go back in and grab some of these darker ones and just like reapply it. You can totally do that. Okay. If you add too much water, you're going to notice that it's going to pick up the paint that you just left. So I'm just going to go ahead and retouch it like that. Okay. I'm not super worried about it. Okay, from here, now we're going to add the lightest of all the values. This is just going to provide the look of like those highlights. And so now we're going to go in, and you know what? Why don't we go ahead and we separate the brush a little bit, so something like that where we can see those individual hairs. We're just going to get the ends of them. And right here, okay. And then we're just going to touch very lightly the top and the middle. Okay. We're going in and I'm just going to make those highlights very prominent in some of the areas, not in all of them. So now I'm just pressing it into the entire area. You could also use a flat brush. That should also work. And so something like that. And you can see that a little bit of it was picked up here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and redo that. And I'm gonna wait for this to dry. In fact, you can use still one of these brushes, and then I would take off majority of it, and then maybe even do something like this. To get those lighter areas in there. So over here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and now do the other half of this. So I want to concentrate it more at the top. I'm not gonna bring it all the way down. To buff it out, I kind of touch the top very lightly. Okay. And then I'm gonna bring some down here. Okay, and then from here, all I'm going to do is now I'm going to go into the regular green. And then I'm just going to bring in some of that regular green back into some of these areas. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of the dark one. It's the second darkest. I'm just going to add a little, I'm going to sprinkle in some of those darker edges. I always bring them like where the darkness is already kind of showing, and I just bring it up so that it looks a little bit more natural. So like right here. All right, there should be some here. Yeah, this. Okay. Okay. And I just do on the overall, the entire thing. And then right where I have all of the highlighted areas, I'm just gonna go ahead and buff these out so that there's no like super white areas, because then that wouldn't look super realistic, other than at the very top. And then I think I'd do something like that. And then I'm gonna turn off this light here. I'm gonna get you guys a little bit slightly closer. And so we should be able to see kind of the look of our bush. And then from here, we're actually going to add a little bit of grass to the sides. So we're gonna go ahead and use this guy here. So this guy here. And then we're gonna go ahead and, you know what? Maybe we can use this one. Let's see how this one looks. Okay, we're gonna go ahead, grab some of this, and then just on the side, we're gonna go boop, boop. That way it creates the illusion of grass. I'm actually gonna go in with the shadow right underneath that one. And I'm just gonna build it from there. And quite honestly, like, we could do a few layers anyway. It's just really up to you. But I'm gonna try it in layers. So I'm gonna grab the regular green. I'm gonna bring it from all the way down here. I don't want to overlap too much with the bush because I think I'm gonna add a little like trunk to it. So that's why I'm not overlapping it as much. Um, Okay, I'm going in, gonna do for these. And make sure you're allowing, like, you know, that you're bringing your brush upward so that it gives the illusion of these little, like, grass pieces, because otherwise then it doesn't super look realistic, and then there was no point in us adding the layers. And so over here, I'm actually gonna go in a little bit more. And this time I'm gonna start like being random about it. So now I'm not going from top to like upward. I'm just kind of bringing them in however. So just like that. So something just like that. And then I'm going to have the grass dry. Then I'm going to add the little trunk, and then we're gonna go ahead and like layer grass again. So this time we're just gonna wait for it to dry. Okay, so I went ahead and I grabbed a little bit of brown, and then over here I have brown, and I mixed in some black to make it slightly darker. And then I'm gonna go in with my brush, and I'm gonna start making the trunk to this. Now you can also use a smaller brush if you'd like. And so maybe something like this. Of course, when we add water to it, we can point it a lot better. Okay, and I'm actually gonna go in with the darker brown first. And then I'm just going to add tree trunk like this. Okay, and then I'm going in with the lighter brown. So with the lighter brown, this one right here. Okay. There, this one is. And then I'm going back in with the darker. And I'm just going to slightly touch in some areas here. And I'm also going to go ahead and with the darker one touch right here at the very top. Okay. Then we wait for this to dry, and then we're gonna layer grass on top of it. Okay, while I was off camera, I went ahead and I just added a light blue to the background, so a tinted blue, just to kind of complete the look of the scene. During that time, the trunk went ahead and it finished drying, and so now I'm gonna go in to the darker green, so right here, this green. And I'm just gonna go ahead and one more time, very randomly, I'm going to start adding a little bit of the especially now that we have the background, I think it's very important to put the a little like grass specks behind or in front of the background that we've created. So that's what we're going to do. So just like that. Okay, over here I kind of picked up the paint, so I'm gonna go ahead, add another little swatch. And so just like that. Okay. And so then we'll say that this is our finished bush painting. All right, see you in the next one, guys.